Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Life's Black Belts. As always, I am your host, Eric Alders. Once again, it's my honor and privilege to be bringing you another Life's Black Belt guest. And today I'm going to be joined by Maura Sweeney. She is known as the Ambassador of Happiness. She is an international speaker. She's an author of 6 volumes of The Art of Happiness and so much more, but I don't want to ruin it. I want to let you guys learn a lot more about her during our interview. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Maura Sweeney. How are you, Maura?
Eric, I'm great. Thank you for having me on. I would have never thought in life. I've never been to a class on any kind of martial arts, but I find it very funny. I'm on Life's Black Belts, and for good reason, I'm sure. So great to be with you.
Absolutely. Well, like I try to, go over in previous episodes, to try to explain to people, because the name does throw people off sometimes. They think it's a martial arts specific podcast, but it's not. It's about how the journey in martial arts requires you facing adversity, overcoming failure, learning that failure is something you have to not fight against, but accept and actually learn to enjoy, because we grow the most from it. Learning how to get ourselves up each day to be the best versions of ourselves, knowing that we're not perfect and just striving to be our best. And I feel like that life is a parallel to that story as well. And there's some amazing people out there that are doing some great things, that have overcome a lot, have accomplished a lot, have inspired many people, and in my view have become black belts in life. So it's really more of a metaphor. So that's why you're here.
And a great metaphor.
So I know we're going to get into your speaking and the topics that you speak on, which is happiness. And I'm very intrigued to ask you about those things, because obviously a big part of what I do is also trying to inspire my students to live a great life. But let's learn a little bit more about you, because I know briefly about your story. You had gone through a lot of different changes through your youth that's led you to where you are today. So why don't you give me a little bit of background of your life growing up and where you got your start?
Well, I came from New Jersey, which is where you live. Northern New Jersey, though, in my case, and it was several decades before you were born. But I must have come into this world a little bit different, or maybe, yeah, I'm going to say different. For one thing, I'm left-handed. And something about the way my mind operates, it's as if I don't see what the rest of the world sees. I often miss what they see, but then my value systems as a result would always be a little bit different. And I'll give you this example at things I share with others all the time. My mother, very smart, very wonderful school teacher, very strong-willed, strong-minded, etc., was probably the biggest influence in my life. I always looked up to her. And yet I discovered years later I was so much different. So where she saw me one way and tried to bring me up that way, and I would say conformed to the image of what she assumed, presumed, and would want to see me become, was at variance with who I was internally. And, sometimes in life you could have various aptitudes, but they may not be your passions. They may not be the things that so ignite you in life. So she envisioned me as probably this very, not that any of it was bad, very intelligent, very polite, kid glove kind of a girl that would be playing in the piano indoors, taking art lessons, writing thank you notes on her own stationery. But what I wanted to do was be outside playing with my friends. There was something in me that got so much energy out of being with other people. So I was really living in many ways an isolated existence through my schooling and things like that, when what I really wanted to do, Eric, was travel the world, make friends from every single culture, learn from them, share from them. And I literally saw the world as a picture of a happy place, meaning a happy society with people of every background, but I saw the similarities in all of us. Had you ever gone to Disney and seen the It's a Small World exhibition?
You can't forget it once you see it, for sure.
Okay. My experience was 1964 at the World's Fair in New York. I think it was Queens, New York. I went with the Brownie Troupe. And so not only was that in my head, but I would look at airplanes flying back and forth to Newark Airport. And all I could think about as a little preschooler was, I want to get on those airplanes. I want to travel around the world and meet those people, because to me, they felt like they were unmet relatives or unmet friends. So that was one piece, traveling the world to make new friends and learning different cultures. Secondly, I'm of a certain age, I was born in 1958, I vividly remember John F. Kennedy in the White House. And I remember that era, and I remember that feeling of expansiveness and inclusion, where we were a young nation with a lot ahead of us, where we were bringing others into our nation, but we were also sending others out through the Peace Corps. It was an era of don't ask what your country could do for you, but ask instead what you could do for your country. Eric, I was, as I'm saying, 5 years old, but I wanted to be one of those people that was thinking in the future. The third real interesting element that will all come into play as we talk later is the fact that I was trained, or let's say groomed, to be a lawyer. My grandfather was educated at Georgetown Law School. He was an attorney in New York, New Jersey, very prominent. He passed away early when I was 5, and my family decided I'm going to be a lawyer just like him. Now, I remember being in his law office, but instead of being consumed with the law and all the legal books and the people coming through, I was so drawn to the typewriter that his secretary used. And I would watch her type all of these documents. And back in the day, she would use onion paper, and she would make things in duplicate and triplicate. I couldn't even read yet, but she was nice enough to let me sit with my dresses right next to her in the office. And all I could remember thinking, Eric, was, people are reading words on a piece of paper, and they're going to think about the power of the words and the ideas of the words. They're going to talk about these words, and they're going to change the way they think. And those three elements, traveling the world to meet people of every culture, leadership that was inclusive and uplifting and hopeful, and thirdly, the power of the press, publishing. Those three things were the original interests I had. So here I end up. I went to Boston College. I majored in political science. I had an internship with Senator Ted Kennedy, the younger son or the younger brother of the former president. I was offered a full-time job, finished college, went to Seton Hall Law School, taking out loans. And Eric, let me tell you what, all I knew was that this was so not what I wanted to do. So here I was, only 23 years old, trying very hard to be this dutiful daughter, a people pleaser. And at 23 years old, I don't know if I sent you the photo, there's a picture of me in between my third and fourth semester. It was smack in the middle of the law school program. I was in New York City on New Year's Day, and you know what? You look at me in that photograph, and I'm the walking dead. Only 23 years old, and I look like nobody's home. My eyes are vacuous, and it was about a month after that. One day, I could not get out of the chair to drive myself to downtown Newark to go to Seton Hall Law School. I literally couldn't get out of my chair, and that was the beginning of, Maura, this is not your path. And as much as you may want to please other people, your body can't support a fake existence. Everything that was in me was so strong as a child, Eric, I couldn't get away from it. My body was breaking down, and so I basically had to tell everybody I'm leaving. I think I told them it was a leave of absence, but I knew I was never going to go back. So that was the beginning of me finding my way. But it was, you want to talk about failures, that was considered, oh, Maura, you so disappointed us. We had our lives and our futures on your future. And looking at my parents that, you know, they saw me as the first child, always the good student, always the one who was the, not to say the trendsetter, but I always was looking for, what do I do next to get the approval of those around me. And I literally broke down at age 23. So you could ask your next question after that.
Wow. I mean, well, I have to rewind a little bit, because what's interesting is how much insight you seem to have as a young girl, that you have interest in traveling, and you have interest in sitting in law offices and watching people type. And it seems like maybe you were an old soul there a little bit, but what do you think it was about you that separated you? Because most girls at those ages, you know, are thinking about playing with friends, or, you know, as you're getting older, you know, your whatever sports activities or boys or whatever you want to talk about. But what do you think was different about you that made you stand out? Is it similar from how your siblings behaved as well? Is it how your parents decided to raise you? Where does that come from?
Boy, that's a big, deep question. It goes long and wide. I did tell you I'm left-handed. You know, if you ever watched a left-handed person read a book or a magazine, something happens. They always start at the end. And also, I'll tell you this, I saw a lot of death when I was a young child. A lot of people around me died, some quick, some slow, some terribly, and, some by accidents, whatever. And I think a lot of that had a huge impact on the way in which I saw the world. First of all, it sobered me to this is life and life ends. And how will I be at the end of life? And what is my life going to count for? And what matters in life? So those are things that, sometimes you might have old Holocaust victims that were changed forever because of things they had. That was one element. Even though you said, young girls back in the day, they want to go out and play with friends. I did want to go out and play with friends. In fact, Eric, I remember crying at the front door of my house when I was maybe 4 years old. We lived on a cul-de-sac, and it was a new cul-de-sac, which meant the neighborhood was filled with kids. And my mother in the summertime would have me in pajamas. She told me it was like 4:30 in the afternoon. I'd be wearing pajamas, crying at the front door in front of the screen, looking at all my friends outside. She was getting me ready for dinner and bed, and I wanted to go out and play with friends. And the other thing I'll tell you, but they all came full circle, was, and this is the frivolous part of me, like I wanted to be out with my friends and play tag and all these other games. And the other thing was, I remember I was probably 2.5 years old. And one Saturday, my mother was ironing in the den, and she had TV on. And I see this man with a microphone, oddly enough, and I was like, what is the microphone? Everybody's talking into the microphone. And there are these teenage kids, and there was music playing. I didn't know what it was, but I watched the move, and I said to my mother, what is that? And she said, they're dancing. It was American Bandstand, which you would not know of, but it was Dick Clark, American Bandstand. It played all over the country. So it was the Beatles music, Motown music. It was everything that was going on in that whole era. And when I saw kids dance, I said to her, that's what I want to do. Well, instead of going to dance class, I was in the house playing the piano, which I didn't want to do. And so instead of all that frivolity and learning how to move my body, I was instead told that I lacked coordination, which of course, for lack of having done anything, I did lack coordination, never gotten involved with sports. So again, I was groomed for the smart, the artistic, those kinds of things. But Eric, listen to this. As much as my mother was, I didn't realize this till later, she was afraid of the outdoors. So she was controlling my environment by keeping me indoors as well. I was 50 years old and I started to learn how to dance. And that's what actually launched my books, because I took an old desire I had from 2.5 years old, wanting to learn how to dance, knowing that there was a piece of me that had yet to find its expression. Knowing also that growing up with a mom who thought at age 34 that she was an old woman and she couldn't learn new things, she couldn't do new things, try new things, go out and explore, that I had to overcome all that acquired mental baggage, enroll myself in a local college, look like a sheer idiot. And I mean that. People didn't laugh with me in class, they laughed at me at dance class because I couldn't even do a simple walk across the room. And yet I kept going at it and failing the class twice, almost destroyed non-stage performance. But Eric, I never gave up because something inside of me understood that there was a light that I was born with. And I believe this is all of us. Some of us may cover over the light. Some of us may be distracted from the light. And I would call it the life that's within us. We deny it. We put it on the back burner. We try to please all of these supposed experts, parents, authorities that are outside of us. And we don't give place to who and what we are or what we're meant to be. And because I believe it's our life, I not only took a lot of the journey in my own life, but I took until after I was 50, after a corporate career in management, after raising and homeschooling a daughter, building a business with my husband, and preparing my daughter for college. That's when I said, you know what? Now I'm going to go share life lessons with other people. Not that I thought I was perfect, not that I thought that I knew it all, but that I figured I could share some of what I learned about living from the inside, living according to, let's say, the things that were important to me and expressing them, even if it meant I had to go through a lot of trials and tribulations to get there, so that I could be the living embodiment of the very messages I would give to others. And somehow they've rung true in a number of venues. That's a long answer to a very deep question you asked me.
It's a deep question, but your answer is full of passion and energy, which is, I know, why you're doing what you do. It's apparently natural with inside of you. And first, I can relate to you being left-handed because my wife's left-handed. So I'm used to her telling me she's, always in her right mind, of course. But one thing that you brought up that does answer the question, because I asked you about what made you different. Why did you see things differently? And I think that your discussion of being exposed to different forms of death very early on is one of those. I'm sure there's others, but it's a very impactful answer. And I could relate to you because I started experiencing that at a young age as well, at about 11, losing my grandfather that I was very close with. And then, having family friends pass. I lost my best friend in the world when he was 19 years old. And I still keep his picture on my desk at the school I'm sitting at right now, looking at him, smiling at me. And I've met people that are in their 40s and 50s that haven't experienced a tenth of the death that I had experienced by the time I was a teenager. And it also made me very sympathetic and empathetic and try to think about what my place is in this world and what will my eulogy sound like. And when you brought that up, it made all the sense to me of why you stood out differently, because I think it changes your entire thought process when you understand that life is short, and usually children don't have that perspective just yet to understand that their parents' life is temporary, that their life is temporary. You're just a child and alive. And unfortunately, when you're exposed so young, it could have gone a different way. It could have brought you down a much darker path, but it seemed to have taken some positivity out of you.
You know what? I think, boy, oh boy, your answer was really deep too there, Eric. But yes, we're speaking the same thing. There's one word that came out as you were speaking. When we can witness the death of those close to us, maybe those that aren't close, what it does at some level is it removes the vanity of life. You know what the vanity is? Okay, I'm in my 20s. I look my best, I'm at my peak, or I'm in my 30s, whatever it may be. It's almost like life goes like this. And when you realize there's only a short amount of time where you are, quote unquote, at your best or at your strongest, physically, mentally, socially, whatever you want to call it, and you know that there's an arc to it, you say to yourself, it's going to be really short-lived. So am I going to live for one moment in time and be an ego or be egotistical and self-centered about this, something that I can't hold on to? Or am I going to look for the bigger meaning and the bigger message? Now, this is something else I might as well introduce here. You said I could have gone on a darker path, and that's true, because when I was younger, I was desperately unhappy. For one thing, I explained that I wanted to be outside, but I was indoors. I wanted to be with friends, but I was often isolated. I was even sent to a different school that kept me away from the public school kids. So I felt very, use the word incarcerated is too strong of a word, but I felt like I was not free. I wasn't free to be myself. I wasn't free to come and go as I pleased. But then again, what kid is? So I don't look at it as bad. But I used to cry so often that my maternal grandmother would call me waterworks. She said, Maura, you cry at the drop of a hat. And so here's what I decided one day. I realized that I could either I could feel like a victim, like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to get out of where I am, and I'm going to be miserable, which of course is not a good thing, or I'm going to be angry. Or I could make a choice to say, you know what, there's not too much I could do about the here and now, but I will grow up as an adult who is happy and free. When I use the word free, Eric, it was like free to be me. And that was a decision I could remember. Maybe I was 9 years old. And I never lost sight of it. So I thought, well, here I am. A lot of people, maybe they're going through a stage or a place in life where things they're dealt with are not the best. Maybe they're going through caring for someone who's terminally ill and they don't know when it's going to be over, or they're in an abusive situation, or they're going through an economically poor time. But I figured I will keep my mind on my future. And then what I did over the course of years, and I could see this, I was doing all the things I needed to on the top level. like going to school. I had a career and all these other things. I did everything the world said, but I always would find time, even if it was a little bit of time, to pursue things that were of interest to me. And I think that part of that kept me alive, kept me growing, kept a dream within me and the light within me burning. And that was a big thing for me. When I left law school, the other side of it was I knew when I was growing up, I couldn't wait to be an adult. Like, oh, here's my life. Now what am I going to do with it? And yet here I was in New Jersey, not wanting to live in a cold climate, not wanting to practice a 40-year career in law, but looking to do something of greater impact in a way I saw or envisioned. And so I knew the light within me at 23 was dying out. And that's why I couldn't get out of my chair. And I remember thinking, I don't know what the path is, but I'm going to find it, even if it means I have to kind of dig a path or, let's say, create my own, pioneer my own path to find and to pursue those things that are meaningful to me. And that's what I did day by day, everywhere I went. Even when I ended up in an industry, it was the telecom industry. I wasn't really a techie person, but I found ways within that industry to connect with what I loved. And in my case, I was managing people, developing organizations, developing cultures, training people, finding out what made people happy, what made them excel, what made groups of people get along well, dealing with conflict. And so every one of those experiences I had, I took the good out of it and I applied it into things to come. Another lengthy answer for you.
It's okay. We both like to speak, so it's okay. What I think a lot of people could relate to what you said there is that people sometimes feel trapped. You used almost the word like a prison, but when you're not doing what you love, what your heart and your passion and your spirit guide you towards, you do feel trapped within your own skin. Whether that means you're overweight and you want to be healthy, you're in the wrong relationship, or you're in the wrong career, whatever it may be. I think a lot of people that listen to this can relate to that feeling, and they don't necessarily know how to make the next move. But what stands out to me, and the question I want to ask you next, is that you had so much insight and perspective as a young woman when you finally became an adult, and you did have the choices to make on your own, even though your mom seemed to guide and shape you for a path she wanted. Why did you follow the path of law and kind of follow more of what she set up for you, as it seemed to have led you to some misery? When you were able to and mature enough to make your own decision, why did you choose that path?
You mean during the time that I was growing up, why did I do everything I was told?
No. What I'm
Oh,
saying is after all of that, fast forward,
yeah.
you're out of high school now. You're getting ready to go into college, but you're a woman now. You're grown up. You're an adult. You have the ability to make a decision. You have a choice of what school you want to go to, what degree you want to pursue. It seems like early on, you knew that you had a passion, you had a desire, there was something different about you. You wanted to travel the world, you had all these things you felt. We talked about that that's unique for people at that age. What I'm asking you is that when you were old enough to make your own decisions, when your mother's grasp of guiding your life was removed slightly, was it just simply wanting to please her still? Was it because you've heard it your whole life? My question is, because you felt it so strongly internally, why did you still seem to make the decision to pursue law school when ultimately that wasn't really what you felt inside?
Well, let me even backtrack. I could give you a couple of answers.
Okay.
When it came time to go to college, if I could have really designed my own path, I would have gone to Georgetown School of Foreign Service because I saw myself more as a foreign dignitary, goodwill ambassador, that kind of a thing. And I loved Spanish, which was a second major I took, which pleased me. But both of my parents were like, no, if you're going to go to law school, because you're going to be a lawyer, you need to take political science. And they were paying for college. And so as far as I was concerned, that did not really give me the authority to make the choice. But what I did, and this is back to my original point, I did everything I was told. So I took a political science major, but then I took a second major doing what I loved, which was Spanish literature. And I even studied in Spain. So that was where I did what I was told, but I also did the second. And you're right, when it came to after college, going to law school, and taking loans out to go to law school, I'm going to use the word intimidation. And maybe some others will relate to this at any level. Sometimes it's intimidation based on your religious background. Sometimes it could be on what the medical doctor said, or it could be what the experts from the news media tell you. You know, the idea of intimidation when you have someone or some entity, whoever that entity may be, and they come at you from the angle that they know better than you. And they do it with such a degree of authority, whether it's real or presumed or presumptive authority. That was this sense of intimidation I felt. And being quite isolated and maybe living somewhat in a bubble, who was I to say, I know better than you? Now, I know there are a lot of kids or young people that are like that. That apparently was not in my makeup. It wasn't. In fact, if you could look at me now, when I write, I blog, I'm on programs like yours, I speak a lot. I knew, Eric, that ultimately I had this calling in life. I couldn't even get away from it. Somehow I knew I wasn't ready in my 20s. I wasn't ready in my 30s. I wasn't even ready in my 40s. It wasn't until I hit my 50s that I knew I had a lot of not only, let's say schooling, but career, being married for 30-something years, raising a child, schooling a child, developing a business with my husband, growing older. There's a lot in this that I could finally reach a point, and then also having traveled a lot. I don't know, by the time I spoke, maybe I had been to maybe 40 countries, 45 countries. Now I've been to 60. But in every one of these cases, I was developing a lot of life experience, some of which was good, some of which was very challenging. I knew that I couldn't be out there sharing with other people, like, why don't you try life this way, unless I had personally lived through a lot of that experience myself. So I definitely took the long route, but hopefully with some of the things I share with people and the life lessons, they could make some connections and maybe shorten life lessons in their own life and get to where they want to go sooner rather than later.
Awesome. Now, just one more part on your past real quick, because you said as a young girl, you were very aware of President Kennedy being in office and his message inspiring you. And then later you said that you had an opportunity to intern with his brother. That must have felt like a full circle moment for you. And even though you didn't necessarily have the passion to be a lawyer, the fact that you were able to intern with someone at such a high level, and still didn't quite find the happiness there. Just briefly, what was that experience like for you, and what'd you get out of it?
I'm going to tell you, I've never said this publicly. So good question, Eric. My senior year, we were responsible for coming up with an internship as part of this political science degree. I already found one. It was with a woman who was running for Congress in Boston. I had already been to her place. I had already signed on with her, and I was agreeing with her. And I thought, okay, this sounds fine. I'll be an organizer for her. Again, public relations oriented. That was my thing. And I thought this is kind of a good way, and I could be an advocate. She seemed like a nice enough lady. I don't remember her name. It was a week after that my professor, who I had freshman year, and here he was again my senior year, who called me at the end of class. He said, Maura, he said, we have an internship I'd like to offer you. And he said, it's for the internship for Ted Kennedy. And I said to him, I didn't know there was an internship for Ted Kennedy. I didn't know it. There was. And he said, there is one. He said, and we're offering it to you. Now, here I am out of all these people in my program that would have probably given their eye teeth for it, and it's being offered to me. And I hesitated. And I said to him, well, I've already arranged for one. He said, well, Maura, this is a special one, and we have identified you for it. And something interesting, Eric? I went home, and I've never in my whole life, I've never been a striver. There's a lot of people, they think they have to be number one, and they're going to walk over everybody, and they're going to take a certain path. This was very interesting. I told you the interest I had in Kennedy as a child, which you just touched upon. Something inside of me said, there's a bigger reason for this. You need to do it. So I ended up with I felt badly telling this other woman that I was going to be taking the second internship, which I did. So I had the internship. I was responsible for military. And then in that summer, the woman that I worked for at the office she was part of the military as well, I guess, ROTC. She said, Maura, would you take my position, which then became a paid position over the summer, and I had already was ready for it, and I did over that summer. And then I was offered a full-time position, and I declined it. But I'll tell you something, this is fascinating, and this is the first time, so consider yourself, for whatever reason, maybe it'll have a reason in the future. He was running at that point for president of the United States. Two things happened. People wouldn't remember this except maybe older people. All these other senators, they work in their office. But just prior to my coming to that office, a woman came in with a knife to Senator Kennedy's office, and she tried to stab him in his own office. And as a result, he stayed out of that office. And at the same time, he was also running for president. So during that time, there were various younger Kennedys that came in. I met his wife, Joan. I went to a private event for Joan. And then one day, I was Mrs. Siri, I think she was the office manager at the time, came and she said, Maura, we have we have a very small event tonight. We'd like to invite you and the other interns to come to meet the senator. Private event. Eric, as much as something told me to go and take that internship, something told me not to go that night. Very interesting. I didn't lie. I was such a student. I said, oh, Mrs. Siri, I said, that is so nice. I said, but I'm studying tonight. I have an exam for tomorrow. And I declined it. Most people would assume I had this relationship or this ongoing experience where I was with the senator. I never have been to this day. And Eric, I can't tell you, but I believe to this day, there is a reason that's going to come full circle with John F. Kennedy, with the brother, with everything. But I don't know what that is. But as much as I was there, and that's another thing to decline it, it was not my calling. You know, there were a lot of people, it's like, imagine at some level if you want to be a big person, if you want to figure largely and prominently on a governmental level in the United States or elsewhere, wouldn't this be a great path? One of the preeminent senators in the U.S. I mean, I could have ended up in Washington, D.C. Even though I knew I was tied somehow to quality government, it wasn't for me. It was not a path. And the same way I could see New Jersey, I thought, oh my gosh, 40 years of having to go through a career as an attorney in New Jersey, New York, it's not for me. I literally have spent my entire life answering to things that make no sense on an outside level, but I know that they make perfect sense on another. Could I give you one other interesting thing?
Of course.
Of course I am, because I already made the opening. Years later, when I was homeschooling our daughter, I got very curious again about what's going on with the government. I've always been this type. I'm the kind of person, I'll pull the curtains away and I will want to know what's going on behind it. What's going beyond the facade? What is in the foundation of what's taking place? Okay, so I was always this researcher. I read books nobody ever read before. So I'm in my mid-30s, and I realized that there's a group in Florida that's part of Concerned Women for America. They're based out of Washington, D.C. These are praying women. They're Christian women. They're very much into laws that are being passed in D.C. So I go the first time looking to do research. The next thing I know, I'm given this volunteer position as communications coordinator for the state of Florida. So I end up doing press releases. I'm on a couple of radio shows. I'm on TV, Christian TV, but I'm talking about all of these things that are Christian initiatives, or let's say family-based initiatives coming out of Washington. Well, I end up in Washington, D.C. I have lunch at the congressional dining room. I end up getting a private tour. This is at a big event. I realize that underneath Washington, D.C., there are these places that it's like another world under Washington, D.C. You literally go down there. There's trains, you walk, you see all these big people. I get the National Award for Media Effectiveness from the founder of this organization. It was the largest to this day. It's huge. And at the same time, I got the award for Communications Effectiveness Leader of the Year, whatever the heck it was, which was totally unexpected, probably more for the sake of all the work I did. I learned that the director of that organization, who was also a talking head, was about to leave. And that I was probably this far away from being their next talking head. And yet, Eric, there was something that I had discovered that really so hurt my heart, I can't even tell you, where things going on at the front and things going on behind the front did not match. I actually lost my voice for 2 weeks. I couldn't speak. And then I very nicely had to step down. So there again, you get all these various things that I do and I step away from. But I'll tell you, fast forward into where I am right now, I don't belong to any religious sect. Although I'm a Christian-based person, but I believe that I see God as being the God over all of humanity. I don't advocate for one gender, one cultural group. Everywhere I go, I am greeted as, could I tell you, like a citizen of the world, like a goodwill ambassador for the world. People in strange places, in different places, in countries I didn't even know existed, have come out of the woodwork to say, Maura, thank you for speaking to me in ways that I can't even explain to you. So somehow all of my supposed stepping aways, the no's, the saying no to various promotions that appear good in the world site, have brought me to maybe this bigger calling that I'm meant for.
Well, I think sometimes life gives you cues and not everybody takes them. Some people pass by them quickly. So it seems like you got some cues then you started listening to yourself more as you got a little bit older and you understood that it wasn't time to settle anymore and do what other people thought was right. And, for all good reasons, like you said, anything could have happened if you went to that party. I mean, a lot of history with Senator Kennedy and some people that he would work with in the past and, and so on. So
right.
And you ended up in better spots as opposed to, unfortunately, at the bottom of a lake, like some other people did.
Oh my gosh, I wasn't even thinking bottom of the lake. Wow, Eric. See, and yet, you know what? I've never announced that to other people. They don't know. You would assume I knew the man. It was like, as much as I had to say yes to that, I had to say no to that small party. Interesting you would say that, but you know what, Eric? And this is probably something for anybody listening to your show needs to hear, because they're all life lessons for all of us. And we take life stories and we can relate them to our own life. I could remember being like 50 years old. Our daughter was getting ready for college. And I had said no or stepped away from a lot of things, including a corporate career where I was number one in the country as having the top branch. I was offered a position in New York, Chicago. It was like, no, that's not my thing. I'm not meant to be running some corporation that's in charge of telecommunications. It's not my calling. But I remember I was 50 years old. Now think about this. And we were on a family cruise, and all I wanted to do was cry. I saw this. I saw a picture. Oh, you can't pretend this has no writing on it, okay? An empty piece of paper. You could consider it a life resume. And I thought, what in God's name have I done? I have said no and stepped away from so many things that other people think are great. And yet I have stepped away from them. And who the heck am I? What am I doing? I felt like everything was in the natural world, coming up with zero. And I remember going literally into the bathroom in our cabin in the middle of the night one night, sitting on top of the closed toilet bowl seat, crying at 50 years old. And I thought, what have I done with my life? It looks like a blank slate. Nothing is there. What have I built? And it was in one moment. It was like all these times that I would step down, step away, say no. And it was like a separate part of me was like, no, Maura, everything you did for a good reason. And now I might as well enter into where I am right now. It was on another trip. My family and I were in the Adriatic area. We were in Croatia, Dubrovnik, which has since become a real popular vacation spot. I was taking a swim with my daughter in a banana boat. We just came to the shoreline, and the city of Dubrovnik was right to our left. And Eric, in a split second, now here I was, this quiet, I was a former homeschooling mother. I walked my dogs, I cleaned the house. I was helping my husband with a business, but I was thinking, what am I going to do next? But I was sort of like in that in-between stage. In one instant, I saw a microphone so huge, it went from where the water's edge was all the way up to practically to the clouds in the sky. And a question came to mind. And the question was this: what would you do if you were given the world's greatest microphone? And I didn't have a chance to answer the question because the answer was given to me. The answer was, I would publish good news or I would share good news. And the image I was given that gave me those words was I was sharing the news of presumably a white guy and a black guy who had, typically in the United States, now that's the big thing. We got the racial thing going on, but you could switch it to any country and they've got their own form of division. But I was reporting on how these two men had operated not as adversaries, but as brothers, literally as brothers. And whatever they did was so great, was so wonderful. It was such happy news that others were being brought to the top of the microphone, which you might think maybe higher level news. And it was so unifying and so great. Okay, that was an amazing thought. Listen to this. Several years later, when I started doing YouTube videos, blogging, writing, I end up getting my first international invitation to speak where? In Dubrovnik, Croatia, for an international leadership and human resource conference. People from 8 countries, all the former Balkan countries that were all balkanized and broken up, they wanted me there to bring the quote unquote happiness advantage, because this is what I wrote about, happiness, into leadership, where people that were in a post-war era would learn how to get beyond that. And I thought, is this not incredible? And then what was amazing is that when I did go back, I was speaking at the Hotel Presidente, the President Hotel, 5-star hotel, gorgeous, gorgeous. There was a vice president of Pepsi-Cola. There were all these dignitaries from other countries. And I thought, see how there was something, I couldn't see it, couldn't know of it, but something within me from childhood knew I was there. I can almost cry when I think about it, as like this unifier.
It's amazing.
I know. And yet I almost want to tell you, I feel like I've done this slice of all that I'm called to do.
What you gotta bridge these two parts of your life together a little bit for me, because you have lots of moments that you talk about not feeling fulfilled and not feeling happy and not feeling connected to your passion. You then skipped over to talking about making YouTube videos about happiness.
Yeah.
Had you then found it at your point, and what was your message? And was the education, you said you studied political science and you had studied
Spanish lit, law,
Spanish,
philosophy.
exactly.
Yeah.
So where does the psychology of happiness enter your life to a point where you feel you're now in a position to educate and help others find their own happiness?
Great question and great segue to put all this together. This is what I learned, is that life, I don't care who you are, I don't care your age, your economic background, doesn't matter. Everybody's going to have life thrown at them, right? Some things you get, things in life, you don't like them. And I could see this with people. We are never taught, like, all right, you understand this whole idea as a black belt to control your thought life and not react, but respond, to see what's coming and decide how you're going to respond to that, right? It's a different energy form. People are used to going to school and exercising their intellect or their academic skills. They're used to even maybe exercising their body, maybe by the right diets. I mean, I go to the gym all the time too. But you know what we're not taught to do? We are not taught to exercise our mind and our emotions and where we're going to go, to the point where we constantly go back to, who am I? What do I believe in? What's reality for me? And am I going to get bolstered around and kicked around and reactive to every time something happens in my life that I don't like? Or am I going to answer to the reality that exists within me? And this is where all my books and my blogs, everything I do, I can't make up. They come from real life. I learned happiness is a state of mind. We choose to be happy. It doesn't mean like, ha, 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 I'm going out, throwing out fairy dust. But it is a state of mind that says, I'm not a victim. No matter where I am, I'm going to see myself as a beneficiary in a beneficial cosmos. I don't know if you have ever heard of this, but there is a very old Jewish proverb. It hit me when I was in my 20s. And I could tell you I've lived this way. and I've made it my reality, and it's happened over and over and over again. And here's what the proverb says. It says, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Now, nobody ever speaks on this, but there is a book I learned later on that was written about it. As a man thinketh in his heart. I saw this written in the Old Testament of the Bible eons ago. And it was like something said, look at this, look at it, look at it. And it bothered me because I knew there was wisdom in it, but I didn't know what it meant. And so what I went to is I said, what does this mean, ETH, at the end of a word? Because it was probably written in Middle English. When you see a verb with an ETH at the end, so as a man thinketh, walketh, doeth, whatever, ETH signifies to do something over and over and over again. So therefore, here's what it means. As you think over and over and over again in your heart, that is what you will be. So let's bring it to happiness. Let's bring it to fulfillment. Let's bring it to literally the life within you exuding and expressing itself outwardly, right? As opposed to being a shell of a person in society. I believed life existed within me, that I came from life, that I'm part of life, that the life that is our life source is a good source. And I live from that place, and it's benevolent. It looks kindly and evenly and equally upon every single person that walks this earth. So I had to use that when I was in management. You know, many times, like, there were people that tried to sabotage me. You know, there were different things that happened to me when I was managing. And I thought, okay, am I going to play the victim or am I going to be a beneficiary? And using that mindset over the course of time, Eric, that belief system, and not reacting to what people did to me or circumstances, I have to tell you this over and over and over again. Not only was I a beneficiary, but the very environment I was in benefited. And people that I worked for, even people that I might have to let go of in their jobs, they too benefited because maybe they learned cause and effect in their life. They learned life lessons. They learned how to grow. They learned to go on to bigger and better things. And I have taken that with me. And that's where the happiness piece goes. Is this life all that there is? We have X amount of years. Are we going to get, or are we just going to try to do the best we can, thinking we're all just here and we're going to bump around and try to take what we can get while we can before we die? Or are we really here for a bigger purpose, a better purpose, a higher purpose that not only we could live out of as a bright candle in our own lives, but also be an influence and a picture and, let's say, an inspirer, so that others people could say, you know what, I'm going to live my best life too. And no matter what comes my way, I'm going to find a way to be a beneficiary in this too.
So what I hear from you is that, and it's something I believe in as well, is learning to live in the present moment, because a lot of people's, I think, unhappiness comes from the fact that they haven't achieved something. There's something missing in their life, and they say, when this happens, I'll be happy. When I get this house, when I get this job, when I get married, when I have children, when I have money, when I have this clothes, when I have this jewelry, they put it on stuff and things. And I think as you get older, at least for myself, what you start to learn as things happen around you, death and things like this that we talk about, that it's ultimately, learning to be a true version of yourself, learning to appreciate every moment that you happen to be in, the people that love you and surround you. But when you're speaking to people and you're trying to help them find happiness, and they're in one of these moments where they're in a rut, and everyone's got an excuse or a reason of why they think what they're going through is far worse than what anyone could comprehend, because a lot of people think that their experiences are exclusive to them.
Right.
To speak and share your vulnerabilities with others, and you realize that we all go through these same things. But what is it that you do differently to help people find happiness in their life? Is there, and again, it's generically a question that I'm trying to apply to everyone, and I'm sure if you sat down with someone individually, you could be much more specific.
Mm-hmm.
But generically speaking, is there some sort of a formula or approach that you'd like to take with people in guiding them to find true happiness?
Yes. Can I answer that because of certain points you made earlier?
Of course.
Let me tell you this. I mentioned that I had this corporate career in management. So a lot of salespeople, sales offices that I was managing. Do you know what I discovered and learned? And this was one of my abilities. It was to be a leader to help others become their best self or to become stars. I loved it. In fact, my leadership success and joy came from creating other leaders and stars out of other people. But what I learned over a 10-year period of time, because I could never be, some people are very hard charging and they're very domineering. I could never be that type. I would find other ways. But what I discovered is that when people knew their aptitudes, their abilities, and they were praised and given place, an opportunity to become experts in their own right, and respected themselves for their expertise, which is really what I did. That was the model I created, that people didn't feel poor about themselves. Therefore, they didn't have to treat others poorly or put others down or use nefarious means of getting ahead. I actually proved before Harvard conducted their 7-year happiness advantage studies that showed that happy people will actually perform up to 50% better. 50. When people are happy and they're performing any task, that happiness is an energy, and it makes them more creative, more powerful, more courageous, more engaging, more energized, whatever. So I actually had 10 years of a career to experiment with all that and come to those as my own conclusions and philosophy, and it lives within me. So that's part of it. So imagine that when people are happy, they do better. So where are you? Be happy in what you're doing, or find the niche of happiness. Find the things that you really like and pursue those things. Don't focus in on what you don't like in life. Focus in on those elements that you do like, or don't focus on what you don't have. Focus on what you do have. So a lot of that, again, goes internally. That's part of the answer to you. The other thing that I will always say to people, and I think this is really foundational, but it goes right back to what I mentioned earlier. People everywhere, sometimes people will have a momentary lapse of something goes wrong, right? Or disappointment. There are other people. I could talk about countries I've been to, like I'll give you Kosovo, for example. Those people in Kosovo, those young people, they have master's degrees. They're not even allowed out of their own country. And there are certain countries where they're not allowed to go where the EU goes. Their economies are so corrupted by corruptive leaders, wherever it may be that I've been. I can feel that. So I'm literally going in as one who's already been under things and had to bring myself up and over it. So I bring a lot of my energy in life lessons with me, and people, I think, kind of get it by osmosis. It's not only by my words, it's my presence. But I want to tell you what I always say to people. And this is so critical for anybody who's listening today. No matter where you are, no matter what's happening, you could have 1, 10, 1,000, 100,000 so-called problems. They all look different, but they all come down to one question. You have to first say to yourself, am I envisioning myself in the midst of this issue right now as a victim? And I'm telling you, a victim sees themselves as isolated, losing something, terminal, disappointed, and at the mercy of external situations beyond their control, and always disconnected. So am I seeing myself as a victim, or am I looking at myself right now as a beneficiary? And again, a beneficiary, think of the word bene, it means good, right? Oh, am I seeing this as awful and terrible and tragic, or am I seeing this as there's a good that's going to come out of it? But I also am working in a backdrop, a cosmos in my mind of good, not just for myself, even if I can't understand it, but there's good that's going to come out of this. And Eric, I have to tell you something. In all the things, all the places, all the life experiences I've had, I have had to do that over and over and over again. And I've been in some places where, sometimes you want to jump out of your own skin because it's like, I can't believe I'm here. What am I going to do? You want to run away, whatever. But I would always have to go back to that same question. And then I would say, what am I going to choose? And if you could, number one, choose to see yourself as a beneficiary and hold on to it and go into a place of gratitude appreciation. I could even use the word faith. You know what faith is? It's like, I don't understand what's going on right now, but I know it's all working together for good. Eric, I can't even tell you how many things I've had in my own life, I'm not kidding you, that have things that have come out that my mind could not have conceived, but that have turned around to be so unbelievable. It's like, wow, not only am I a beneficiary, I've reinforced my own belief system, and other people have either learned or grown or benefited from it as a result. And so if we as individuals can come to that place of seeing ourselves and choosing to see ourselves as beneficiaries, that's the beginning of the state of happiness, the mental state. Then we carry that energy. Then more ideas come to us. Then more energy comes to us. Then more hope comes to us. Then more light comes to us. Then more possibilities come to us. This has actually been proven by science, but I deal more with people's stories rather than science. You could go check Dr. Emoto in Japan and the studies he did. But I'm telling you, that's the answer I'd give to everybody. Choose first that you're going to be a beneficiary rather than a victim, and live in that space and make it a practice. Let me flip this back to you. You're an instructor. How much, when you talk about practice, right, with your students, how much of that practice do they not only have to do, but internalize until they get to the point where it becomes one with who and what they are? And then what happens in that process? Why don't you share?
Sure. Well,
even though you're the interviewer.
It's okay. No, I love it. I like flipping the roles around for a moment. So one thing I tell them is that the phrase that practice makes perfect is a big fat lie. Because if someone repeats the same thing over and over incorrectly in that practice, they're going to be really good at doing it wrong. So you have to practice perfectly. And of course there is no perfect, but what I mean by that is if you're not putting 100% of the effort in and taking the time to make sure the steps that you're taking, the moves, the whatever it is you want to talk about, if you're not doing that properly and carefully enough to make sure that you're dotting your I's and crossing your T's, you're not going to improve the way you want to. Now, when you are doing it properly, it takes thousands and thousands of repetitions before it can become autonomous and almost like you're on an autopilot. And one thing that I'll do often to try to explain to them, because they'll see how me or someone else that's at a higher level can move, and when they're learning how to do it, how awkward it feels when it's new. And that could be something physical I'm talking about. It could be exercising the emotions and the spirit and the mind that you're talking about. But it's a consistent process, and understanding that the more that you consistently pursue that excellence and accept the failures along the way, that you'll continually improve. And one quick example I'll give them is I'll just grab something in the room and I'll throw it at somebody, and every single usually for an adult or a teenager, not a 3-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
and they'll just reach their hands up and catch it, and I'll say, why'd you do that? I didn't ask you to catch it. They just look at me like completely clueless. I say, well, because thousands of times in your life, somebody threw a ball or an object towards you. And if you did that to a 2 or 3-year-old, it would have either fallen or bounced off their face. But because you've done that so many thousands of times without even thinking about it, your hands lifted up, grabbed it, and pulled it in. Well, eventually, your martial arts training and your martial arts practice, or what you're preaching and what you're talking about, when done enough, when the consistency of it reaches a point where it becomes like an autopilot, that's when I think you truly find that success of really not only being good at it, but enjoying the moment and being able to kind of see the actions you're taking almost from an out-of-body experience, and see your body move or feel the energy, and just enjoy being an observer of that from within yourself.
So, you know what? You expressed through different words what I'm saying. There comes a time when the mental exercises or the life exercises cause your mind to be so trained that ultimately your inner being and your outer extremities, your outer life, become harmonized. You become one. There's an incredible joy in that. Eric, this is an interesting thing. I mentioned a few of the little things along my life's path that maybe would have been good paths for me. Head of a corporation, or let's say VP of a national corporation, or a talking head on national TV speaking for a national organization, or maybe doing something in Washington, D.C. Okay. maybe even financial rewards. They all sound good. I want to tell you something really interesting. Here I am. I'm older than I was back then. Financially, I don't have, let's say, the presumed or supposed means I would have had doing some of the previous things I've done, including being a co-owner in a very profitable business with my husband that was computer related, not so purposeful. This is the irony of ironies, because of all the practice and all the places I've been and all the speaking that I've done and all the places I've put myself out there outside the comfort zone, and the practices, literally the practices. I can be among people of the highest stature, people, whether it's financially, politically, religiously, in media, it doesn't matter. This is a very interesting thing. Whatever it is that I carry within me has become so rich and so integrated and so strong that my presence precedes me, as if my energy, the energy within me, and whatever exudes outside of me is one and the same. And I so strongly believe that not only the path I've taken in life, everybody's got their own path, right? Everybody's got their own journey. But the principles behind it are so important that we would, over time, if people started becoming more mindful of who am I on the inside, what are my values, what's important to me, what matters, and employing their energies toward that end to be legitimately and authentically all they want to be, where they are unified and harmonized, we would end up in a world that wouldn't have to compete, that wouldn't be talking about who's taking advantage of somebody else, who's walking over somebody else, who's backstabbing somebody else. There would be so much more than what we need to go around, that there would be such a new level of cooperation, new creations, new communities. That's really what I'm all about. And I'll tell you that this is interesting. We haven't talked too much about even physical exercise. As much as I told you, I was brought up and I never did like athletic stuff. I was like the last one to ever be called in gym class to hit a ball, because I never could. I used to run away from them. But I work out routinely at a local gym. I do yoga. I do Zumba. I learned how to dance. I took probably 4 or 5 years of dance, whatever. I remember being at, it was the president's, I won't call it the White House. It was where the president of Macedonia hosted all of his big events for all the leaders of Macedonia. And I was speaking there once. I spoke there twice. And one of the young leaders came over to me at an event after I spoke and said, "Maura, can I ask you something?" She said, "I know you mentioned your age," but she said, "Do you do something like yoga?" She said, "Because I'm looking at you thinking, this cannot be a woman of this age." She said, "The way you move, the way you carry yourself is so different. It doesn't speak of a woman who would be 59 at the time, And I believe that all of the elements that I spoke to you about today, Eric, over the course of time work together. There's a photo of me at 15 years old. I was on my way to Spain. It was a class trip. Surprisingly, I was not only allowed, but encouraged to go. And I'm at JFK Airport, and I'm carrying suitcases, only 15. If you look at me in that picture, I looked like I had no energy, no friends, that I was totally lost, totally isolated, and that I was carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders. I also looked, the energy, if you could feel energy, like I was a 72-year-old woman carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders. Now, you may look at me today, we haven't talked about this, but a couple of months ago, I was in an accident. And not only did the accident total my car, and I've been spending months at the chiropractor, but it also affected my brain. So I have to, this is like my other thing where I'm going through yet another practice in life. There would be times I'd want to talk and I think, what was that word? What was that thought? Because my brain actually had a contra coup. I ended up in the hospital. My heart stopped. But I thought, you know what? I could look at this like, oh, I have big plans ahead of me. And how is this maybe somehow slowed me down? But you know what I know through it all, Eric? It's like it's going to roll right in to my life story. It becomes me, and I will find new ways to work my way through this. I'll give you one quick example. I could not remember certain moves in Zumba classes, which are dance. I used to be pretty good at it. Like, I could see the teacher up there. I could see her. I have no idea of how my body could conform. I had to literally reteach myself on another side of the room using a different part of my brain. So even it's not like I learned every lesson. Here I am. And somehow, Eric, everything I went through with that this accident in late summer, I know is going to be a benefit to me in my future. So however your listeners today can hear all that and know that whatever curveballs are going to come around, you can say to yourself, I'm going to be a beneficiary in this. And in spite of the fact that I may look today like I'm a little bit tired, I may be feeling that, I also know how at the end of that journey, I end up being the person that has more energy and more light. I don't know how it happens, but I just know that it does. Now I sound like I've got the soapbox out. I'm ready to give the message, but I've lived it and I know that to be truth. And I hope that others make those connections in their own life and say, where am I seeing myself as a victim? Where am I not putting forth my best because I gave up? Where did I give up my hope? And where did I give up the light that's within me, that's the life that really needs to be given a place to go and run with it and be the better person in the world so that I could actually help other people to be their best too.
Right. Well, I mean, there's a lot of things that you talk about to bring full circle. There's our thoughts on the situation a lot affect how we look at things, because a lot of people can find themselves in good places where they are happy, and then something comes their way, like an accident or whatever it may be, and then the woe is me, crap keeps happening over and over again. It's one thing after another, and then they go down that path. But the same way that those negative thoughts can snowball, what you're talking about is the positivity and the light and the passion could also snowball. And it's like, which practice do you want to take? If you're going through stress and you're going through drama, nothing may change the fact that you're going through that reality. However, how you respond to it is what you do have control over. And the same thing is in martial arts. If you're about to get into an altercation with someone and someone's getting super loud and angry with you, you may not be able to control what comes out of their mouth or what they do, but you only have control over your response to them. But it's powerful, because if you choose the wrong response, it could go very badly. If you choose the correct response, you could diffuse the situation. The same things in life. A lot of people ask themselves the wrong question, like, why is this happening to me? As opposed to what you said, you're going to find light out of that. The other question is, what's my lesson here? I'm going through this for a reason. What am I supposed to learn from this? So with that said, and I'm sure there's so much more detail in your blogs and in your writings, inside your books, where people watch your videos or your speeches, but it would be hard to summarize, I would assume. But if you're to leave people with a philosophy, a thought, a quote, a mantra, something that you want to at least leave that little carrot out there to invite them to learn more about you, and spark their interest in supporting you and discovering more of what you have to teach. What would you like to wrap things up and leave them with?
I got it. I was inspired as you were speaking because I remembered something. And this applies to everyone. I actually learned this as a little child because I was looking for leaders, maybe after JFK died. Seriously, I didn't like I didn't like what I was going to see with Lyndon Johnson. Do you know where I went for my answers? I went to biographies. And I, in third grade, read every single biography in the fifth grade classroom. And I was so disappointed at the end. Here's what I learned as a young child, because they don't write biographies except about people that did something, overcame something, changed the world, introduced something new, right? This, and think about the arc of life. This is where we started. Where do they begin? What hurdles do they have to go through? What do they have to overcome? And what do they achieve on the foreign side? And how do they inspire others and change the world on the other side? Okay. I learned all these as a common thread in all of these biographies. I was learning about great lives and great life vicariously through other people's biographies. But this is mine, and this is a universal message. I took my biggest obstacles and I turned them into catalysts for my best future. Had I not grown up, Eric, feeling so trapped and so misguided in a sense toward maybe the wrong career, and feeling so unhappy. I had all those as my obstacles, but instead of using them as roadblocks to say, and I believe me, I've been around friends like this. Other people, it's like, oh, poor me. It's all over. And then you know what happens? They die that way. And it's like, no, as long as I'm going to be here, I'm going to make it work. You can say to yourself, look at these obstacles or these challenges. How can I use them as stepping stones to where I need to go? How can these things be catalyzers in my life? How can I learn to use what seems to be so daunting and use my innovative skills, my mindset, my moxie, my courage, my innovation, my tenacity to overcome these things? And what can I achieve on the other side? Eric, had I not been that unhappy little girl who felt like I was supposed to be in a career I didn't want and couldn't go outside and couldn't dance and all these and couldn't have fun, I wouldn't have learned how to dance when I was 50 and launched a book series. I wouldn't have learned to become a manager who trained up people to identify and to exploit their best talents, their best abilities to be their best in whatever they were good at, not what I wanted them to be good at. And I wouldn't have even been a parent of a daughter I raised and homeschooled and taught her to follow what she loves and to do her best things. And then to write about it and to speak about it everywhere. Follow your best self from the inside out. Follow those early intuitions. Follow those things inside of you that give you life and hope and curiosity and passion, even if you're not good at it. And be your best self. So had I not had all of that stuff that felt like it was going to kill me as a child, I wouldn't be that strong and that committed and that passionate and that convincing and that living my word as I do today. It's universal with everybody. So bottom line is, are you going to look at what's in front of you as your lifelong stumbling blocks, or are you going to see them as stepping stones and catalyzers to your best and happiest and most authentic life? And it's all in here.
Right. And what you're basically saying is that we don't have control of what's going on around us, but we have the ultimate choice of whether we want to be happy while things are going on. Not in spite of, but with those things going on, we still have the choice to find happiness in that situation. So
Right.
I love that philosophy because it gives people hope when they feel like there is none, because really it's a mindset that they can immediately snap their fingers if they chose to and start living a happier life effective immediately.
Let me tell you, it might be one of the biggest decisions people will ever have to make. They may feel like they're going into a well that has nothing in it, or they're pulling something that doesn't exist into their frame. You know what I'm saying? It's not easy, but repeatedly so, they actually find themselves, they fill themselves out, and they fulfill themselves. And it's in that place of fulfillment that sense of happiness comes. That's why it's a state of mind. It's not a ha, 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 and I am delirious.
Right.
It's the state of occupying the space that you're in, living now, and knowing that your life matters on a multitude of levels, and that you're a person of influence, and that what you do matters and is affecting others.
And this is why, Maura, you're a black belt in life, because you're out.
Yes,
This is what you're doing. You're out there as an instructor and sensei in your own right, trying to educate people and truly caring about others and trying to teach them how to become the best versions of themselves. And ultimately, that's my role as their mentor and their leader as well. So we have different venues in which we do it, but our philosophy is the same. And one of the main reasons that I kicked off this podcast was to try to highlight, again, like you said, you wanted to put positive. If you had that giant microphone, what would you want to do with it? And you'd want to put out good news. Same for me. I heard there's just too much negativity in the world constantly. Instead of complaining about it, I'm a person that is a little bit more with action. So I wanted to do something about it, even if it only reaches a small amount of people or it reaches thousands or millions one day is irrelevant. I don't do it for the outcome of that. I do it because at least I'm contributing. I'm doing something. trying to introduce people to like-minded people that are out there doing some amazing things and contributing positively to the community that's around them. So I appreciate what you had to offer so far, and there's probably so much more that we can go into, and that might lead to having you back on in the future. But if people did want to learn a little bit more about you, follow you online, would you take a moment? And of course, as always, this will be included in our show notes to make it super easy for people to follow you. But briefly, could you guide us to websites, blogs, books? Where could people find the most about you and follow your continued journey here?
Sure. Thank you, Eric. Well, you know what? The easiest place to find me is my website. It's my name, Maura, M as in Mary, Aura, followed by the number 4 and the letter U.com, mauraforyou.com. The reason behind that is no matter who you are, I am for you, as an advocate for you. But here's an interesting thing. There's some people that like to read, so I have my books. They could find them on the website. I have a podcast for those who like to listen. And so even if they go to my website, they could find the buttons to connect. But my podcast is called Maura Sweeney, Living Happy Inside Out. And those are great. They're about 10 minutes long. I've got over 100 of them. And what they are is about a question that will give people an opportunity to think and reflect upon a point of life. Then I'll tell them a little life story so they could kind of inject themselves into it, and then I'll give them a call to action at the end. So what it is, it kind of puts them on the path of changing the way they think and getting them into the mindset where they can start controlling their mind rather than having their thoughts controlling them. And I have a program. It's a program for people that are like, whoa, I really do need to change my mindset. And that's available through my website as well. It's on the Ngamu learning community, and it's a foundational course. But anyway, mauraforyou.com.
Perfect. So that would be where we would be able to link
Books,
towards all of your books, social
blogs,
media, everything that we're looking for. Perfect.
Everything.
I'll find those links as well and include them in the show notes. So Maura, thank you so much for taking your time out and speaking with me today. I know that that you have a lot going on in your life, so I appreciate you taking out the time to share some of your life story and philosophy and insight, and I'm sure people will get enough of their interest peaked at that moment to look a little bit further into some of your further education and writings that you've put out. So once again, thank you so much for coming on.
And thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, one last time, thank you to Maura, our next Life's Black Belt.